Hello everyone, it's Paul Vincenti tuning in with your free live stream leadership training this morning. So how you all been? What's going on Monday morning? Some of us have got big plans for this week, such as putting on the AC, going to the beach, heat wave starting today. They're saying the temperature is going to go up to 40 degrees. That's hot. So why are you here today? I guess you're here today because you feel that you could be a better leader. And that's the whole reason why I'm doing this. I wanted to share some ideas with you guys on how we can all become much, much better leaders. So, to do that, what I've done is I've created a course which will include some PowerPoint. And if you want the notes of this, then just drop me a message in the message box under the comments over there, and I'll email you a copy of the presentation. So who would be interested in this particular session? I guess you'd be interested if you run teams of people. Anytime you are leading more than one person, you could consider yourself to be a person who has been given great responsibility. So leadership is an enormous responsibility. It's not a privilege. It's not a pay grade. It's a responsibility. And when you're given that responsibility to lead people in the right direction, to help them develop, excel, do the right things, not do the wrong things. Probably if you've led people in the past, or if you're new to leadership, you've experienced many occasions where, as a leader, you find you miss the mark. We don't manage to inspire people. We don't manage to get people to really understand what it is they need to do, or they show us that they know what they need to do, and then they don't do it, leaving us feeling very frustrated. So leadership basically is supposed to be an activity. And as you'll see in this course, it's far from a personality type. Many people think that to be a great leader, you need to be a certain type of personality. Leaders come in all shapes and sizes. So let's begin our session. And let's begin with, I was just reviewing that. Let's begin with what leadership is not. It's not a personality style. So basically, when we say it's not a personality style, we do get people who try to imitate other great leaders, right? They try to copy other leaders and what they're doing by copying their personality. So if they see them do certain things in a certain way, I've even seen people dress like the leaders they emulate, then you find it's a screensaver. It's not genuine. It's not authentic. And as a result, it basically fails. And those people you're trying to lead know it's not you. They know it's not a natural leadership style which you're using. And as a result, you fail. Of course, it's very tempting to want to emulate the personality of somebody else. So personality transplant is not a good idea. Yes, use great leaders who you've known or been managed by or who you see around you as a form of inspiration. But don't try to clone yourself basically into becoming that person. So basically leadership is you, and it's a certain amount of activities that you do. Now, naturally you need to build certain gifts and skills, such as, for example, assertiveness. Yeah, it's an essential platform, a foundation of all leadership. So if you try to transplant your personality into becoming somebody else, it's extremely depressing and may and probably will put you off wanting to be a great leader. So something about leadership you need to keep in mind is that there are different circumstances. So leaders in certain circumstances, for example, a leader in a battle like the Gulf War, I think of General Norman Schwarzkopf, yeah, a fantastic leader of the coalition forces back in the early 90s when the coalition forces set out to free Kuwait and invaded Iraq. Now, don't get into the politics of it. I'm not interested in that, but he had a plan. and he led the coalition forces into battle. But General Norman Schwarzkopf would never probably make a great leader of a team of salespeople. And the reason why is because the circumstances in which a person's personality come to the fore in their training are always particular to that type of leadership. There are cases where crossovers can happen. So a great war leader can become a superb team leader, but it takes a lot of effort. But you need to keep in mind that just because you've been successful leading a group of bankers, for example, doesn't mean you'll be just as successful leading a group of people who are dealing with frontline, with customers, so frontliners. There are different people. Okay, so a team of cooks is not the same as a team of lawyers and sales agents. The needs are different. The attitude is different to the work. The culture is different. And you need to adapt, therefore, your leadership style. There are different personalities. Anyone who understands the area of personality also knows that, as you can see over here, the different personalities which we're talking about up here vary from someone who may be analytical. If you're analytical as a type of leader, then you're more reserved, less outgoing, not likely to give feedback. And that's not great in leadership. Leaders who are not giving feedback to the people are failing one of the most fundamental rules of leadership, which is informing people. How can you inspire confidence if people don't know what you're thinking? So analytical types of personalities will need to work very hard on developing these communication skills and remembering, for example, to give feedback to people. Then there are the drivers. They're a different type of personality. They're natural born leaders. They do, of course, need to also tweak their personality style and build up certain gifts and qualities, such as, for example, listening to people, involving people, because drivers tend to want to just take decisions and leave it up to everybody else to pick up the pieces. You've got the expressives, where with the expressives, you always know who you're getting, where you stand with them, because they're always asking you questions, giving you information. Then there are the amiable type of personalities. I've simplified the personality model, obviously, into these four, the Bolton and Bolton model, because it makes more sense. And the amiable type of personality is the personality who wants to get on with everybody. Okay, they're not assertive. They are very talkative. They want to be friends with everyone. They're great peacemakers. They may suffer with being a leader because they lack the assertiveness qualities. So because of different personalities, we're faced with different circumstances, with different challenges. So leadership basically is not just a personality style, okay, even though you need to adapt that. So keeping that in mind, let's begin to look at leadership in a bit more detail. Of course, if you have any comments now, then go ahead and just pop your comments under there or any questions, and I will answer your questions for you. So leadership, therefore, is an activity. If it's an activity, what that means is it's something that you actually do, right? You don't, you cannot as a leader expect things to happen. So I've seen leaders, for example, of people who get offended, become very offended because they gave instructions on the Monday morning and by Wednesday things aren't going the right way. So they take it personally. So between Monday and Wednesday, what have they done? So if all they've done is shouted and criticized, then they've forgotten the principles or activities of leadership. And so what I hope to do, and then we'll stop for a coffee break in about an hour or so, 45 minutes or so. What I hope to do is go through these 5 different activities that you as a leader need to keep in mind when you're leading teams of people. So when a team fails, I'll go as far as saying that it fails because the leader has failed the team. There's something that you've not done as a leader that's kept your team in check. So what are these activities? Let's start with the first one. The first one is leaders show them the way. So what we mean by this is that the leader must have a very clear vision of where their team is going, of where their organization is going, where they want everyone to go. They need to have a very clear concept, high definition vision of where we expect to arrive in the future, be it the immediate future in 3-6 months, a year's time, or medium and long term goals, 3 months, a year, 2, 5 years? Leaders know where they want to take their teams, and they're able to transmit that clarity and that vision to everyone that they lead. Now, it's all well and good to say this if you just lead a team and there's nobody else leading other teams that you depend on. The issues become complicated when you as a team leader have a very clear vision for where you want your team to go, but it maybe contradicts or contrasts, that's probably the right word, with the vision of another team within the same organization. So unless the whole organization has a clear vision of where it's going, and individual teams within that organization are communicating and talking so that we're all more or less marching in the same direction. Now, my vision for my team may not look like the other team's vision, but the end goal is that we're all going to arrive at that particular group or organizational vision. And so for you to be able to take your team into a direction with vision, it's got to obviously begin with you knowing where you're going, and then you being able to transmit that with that vision with clarity regularly and frequently to your team so that they get there, because otherwise they will eventually go astray. And so you need to be clear about the vision. One of the issues with being clear about the vision is that if the vision is entirely yours and not the team's, and they don't own it, then you have to work overtime to get everybody on your team to buy into your vision. The best way you can deal with that is to actually get others or your team involved in the development or creation of the vision in the first place. If you can involve them at the very beginning stages into what the vision should look like, then they have skin in the game. They own part of that vision, which makes it far more likely for the people on your team who are expected to follow the vision to want to adhere to the vision outcome. Why? Because it's partly their creation. It's partly their baby. When the vision is clearly formulated, and it may not be completely fully formulated once you've involved the team and maybe you just polish it off later, you then need to tell everyone within your team, within the people that you manage, your leadership sphere, what the vision is. There's got to be no misunderstandings of what the vision is and what it means to them individually. You see, if the vision is to get to the triangle at the end, then everybody in my team needs to know how they form a part of that triangle. So every part of their job and every job that they do, they have to be able to understand my job is important because it forms that part of the vision. And if I don't do my job as I'm supposed to do my job, then I fail the team and I take away from the vision. And that's what I mean by telling everyone what the vision is. And that takes a lot of work. It may take one-on-one talks, coaching. It may take some training. It may even take some criticism or praise when they get it right. What's important is not just simply to hold a meeting and say this is the vision, but then to contextualize that vision on an individual basis with individual team players. Put the vision into practice would be the obvious next stage. Once everybody understands what the vision is, how they contribute to it, how important their role is towards that vision, the next thing for them to do is to join forces with you and put it into practice. Now you can launch the vision. You can make it a big affair. You can have a launch the vision cocktail party, if COVID allows. You can have a launch the vision press release. Okay, some organizations take it even further. They involve other people in the press in the event. So they bring in outsiders to give talks. They invite the press down. It doesn't always have to be such a great affair. It can be a very private, small team vision launch where you take everybody out for a coffee or for snacks after or for a lunch. You don't have to even spend money as long as you make it an important launch. So you emphasize the fact that we have launched the vision and everybody knows that it was important, and now we've begun to build that vision together. And of course, if you have people who misunderstand what the vision is, so some people who know exactly what the vision is, and then other people who are completely confused, or even worse, they're vague about what their vision is, then you'll run into problems. So having clarity and making sure everybody has clarity is very important. And over time, the vision may change. It is evolving. It's organic. It's alive. Why? Because visions have to move. General Norman Schwarzkopf, I mentioned him earlier to you, when he invaded Iraq through both Iraq and Kuwait, he had a plan, right? And the plan was to get so far into Iraq within such a period, within a prescribed period of time. And what he planned for was X, Y, Z, right? But what actually happened was there was much less resistance to what they thought from what we call the Republican Guard. And as a result, they made a lot more progress than they thought they would in the first day and a half. You may think that's a great advantage because they're making more progress. But the plan and the vision was to get to a certain point by a certain time. And even if it looks advantageous, there are always consequences. So the plan begins to change and evolve. So now they've made more progress than they thought. The supply trucks of ammunition, food, and fuel weren't making the same progress as the troops were. So now the troops were highly exposed and vulnerable because they didn't have the backup of the supply trucks. And that's why visions, or the plan, begins to evolve, which means along the way, you need to constantly be telling your people what the plan is and if it's changed, how it's changed and why. Because the vision does begin to morph into something different over time. The whole concept may remain the same, but parts of it begin to evolve. So individual people need to know how they need to change, adapt, or react based upon the changing vision. So the last thing I wanted to talk about, and if you have any comments or questions, then this would be the time to start asking them. The last thing I wanted to talk about was reminding them. You need to remind them constantly about the vision because they do get distracted. They get very myopic. They get very focused on the task of now. And as a result, eventually the vision becomes a little bit more vague or less of a priority as other micro priorities take priority. This results, of course, in the overall vision being affected. Confusion within the team. Let's say I have Joe and Jolene who are focused on the vision, but Peter has got distracted. And he seems to be working against almost the vision and Joe and Jolene. And Joe and Jolene won't like that because they're doing what they're supposed to. They're listening to you, the leader, but Peter's now slightly distracted. So a constant reminder of what the vision is essential. And how can you do this? You do this in a variety of different ways. One of them could be, for example, for you to do it would be to do some internal marketing. So posters, billboards, email signatures. I've seen organizations create mugs and pens to remind people of what the vision is. Regular meetings, or a reminder of the vision at every regular meeting. Individual meetings with people who may be getting distracted and away from the vision. These things constantly keep people on their toes. So that's the vision. Let me just move to the next frame for you. Okay, so are there any questions or comments about the vision? Let me just give you a few minutes and wait for these to pop up if there are any. Don't see any questions or comments yet. No, okay, so we can continue. No questions, no comments, so here we go. Right, so the next activity, remember again, leadership is an activity, okay, it's something you have to do. So you must create the vision and constantly remind people of the vision, keep people on track about the vision. Why? Because they go off track or the vision changes and evolves. The next activity is leaders show their people how, okay? They guide people. When we talk about leaders guiding, often leaders who are very busy managing, and they're not the same thing. Management and leadership are not the same thing. They're related, like cousins, but they're not siblings. They're not twins. We'll see that later on as we get to that frame where I'll outline the major differences between the two. So leaders need to spend time with people individually. We already made reference to this before in relation to vision, right? So for you to spend time with people individually means it costs you. There's a cost to it. I mean, leaders don't lock themselves away in their glass castle and in their office and take appointments to talk to people or for people to talk to them. They are spending time with their people all the time. And people need the help of the leader. And it's generally the leader that will inspire them into performance. And so you need to spend time with people, showing people how to do things. Now, you may not think it's your job. You may think they should know this already. But the leader is patient. The leader is servant above all. The leader, it does not demand respect. The leader earns that respect through service. And you serve people by being there for people, by being present. Now, of course, you need to use caution and wisdom here because you want to be able to help people individually, but at the same time, you want these people to own that responsibility, learn that skill. So a certain amount of training is important, one-on-one training. And one-on-one training skills basically mean teaching a person how to do a job or a part of a job to the point where they're able to do it on their own. So one of the biggest mistakes leaders make with this is that they tell people what to do. They don't show people what to do. And there is a fundamental difference. In telling someone what to do, they may agree, even under pressure, even out of fear of disagreeing with you or being seen to have not understood. They will even nod and agree. But can they actually do the job? And that's where the leader has to spend time with one-on-one training. So you show people how to do it, then you let them practice it. Whilst they're practicing under your supervision, you congratulate if they get it right, you criticize if they don't, and then when you're sure they can do it on their own, then you encourage them. That's one-on-one training. For leaders to be able to do this, you need to be able to spend time with people. A deeper, longer term program would be to coach or mentor people. So coaching basically is, this is often misunderstood by leaders. Coaching is not telling people what to do. Okay, that's direction. Coaching is walking at the same pace as the person you're developing, even sometimes slightly behind them, letting them discover how to do things. And you're just behind them to help in case things go wrong. Coaching basically requires you to set mutually agreed goals. And then you reestablish when you'll meet up again, a week, 2 weeks later, 10 days later, 3 days later, to reassess mutually how they are doing with their mutually agreed goals. And as you develop the confidence gradually, people develop more confidence, take on more responsibility, and therefore they know how to do things. So showing people how to do things is an essential part of all leadership, right? You need to be able to do this constantly and with great patience. And there are a number of challenges with this. So some of the challenges, and if you have any questions again or comments, go ahead and post these. So what are the challenges with trying to get people to do the right thing? Well, one of the problems is leaders lack these two fundamental skills, which I'll be presenting at some later live stream event. One of the skills is the skill to be able to criticize. Now, some of you will say, well, I know how to criticize. I criticize all the time. I've no problem criticizing. It's the easiest thing in the world. Or you could be a different type of leader who says, I never criticize, but I praise. I praise all the time. I'm constantly praising because praise is a good thing. Now, whatever the reasons are behind your two decisions there, they're both wrong. What do I mean? The leader needs to praise and criticize. The analogy I like to use is, and if you've trained with me before in the past, you've heard me use this, are the wings of a bird. So if you have a dove, the bird has two wings, right? The left wing or the right wing being either praise or criticism. With just praise, the bird only has one wing. And all that bird can do is fly around in circles and down. It's never going to be able to go off in any direction. Whether it's praise or criticism, one wing doesn't work. you need to balance praise and criticism to keep people on track. Because even if you show them how to do things, eventually they do forget, they make mistakes, so they need encouragement, but they also need to be praised when they get it right. So what does praise do? Praise tells the person you're leading that they're on track. Criticism tells them they're off track. And you need to use both to keep people on track. Because if you don't do that, they lose track. So showing them how requires great patience. Some people learn quickly. Others take a longer time to develop new skills or behaviors. Leaders don't give up on people. Now I'm saying, of course, you don't give up. There are very rare circumstances where people just shouldn't be in that job. You need to question then the recruitment process. Why were they recruited in the first place if they're just simply not suited for that type of work? Maybe the interviewing process is all askew. Whatever the case is, if they've been through the recruitment through your HR department, or if you recruited them, because you are the HR department as well as the leader, then you'll find if they're supposed to be in that job, some people will learn quickly. Other people take a longer period of time. So resilience and patience are two skills you're going to need, or two attitudes or gifts you're going to need, because you do need to be very patient with some people. You won't understand, for example, why something as basic and simple as ABC, which everybody else gets, they can't get. It could be their personality type, it could be the way they think, it could be their profile, okay? The DISC profile. If you want to know what the DISC profiling is, then look it up on Google. But it's one way of determining if the person is an extrovert or an introvert, somebody who's great at sales, who's very good at leading, or who might be just very good at administrative work when you're recruiting people. So lots of patience, lots of resilience, and of course what you need is perseverance. You need to persevere because it takes time to develop people. Rome wasn't built in a day, we hear people say, but with people it's impossible to develop everyone at the same pace. You're always going to get people who develop quickly, faster, and other people who take longer to come online and learn new skills. So basically, that is the importance of showing people how. As an activity in leadership, you've got to show people how to do things. Moving on from that, the next activity. This may seem a little bit rhetorical and almost philosophical, but you need to show people that you have faith in them. You are the leader. When I talk about showing faith in your people as a leader, what we're talking about basically is the following. And the example I'm going to use is Lord Nelson. Lord Nelson and the Battle of Trafalgar led his far inferior number of ships into battle against the enemy, the French and the Spanish fleet. And in so doing, as he was a leader who was trusted because he showed faith in the captains of all the ships, and he was absolutely trusted. He was an amazing leader. A lot of the skills I'm talking about here, he just owned naturally, okay? Lord Nelson was able to get such great faith and trust from his people because of the faith he showed in their ability to take decisions. In other words, he showed them he trusted them, so they trusted him in return. That he beat the combined forces in the epic Battle of Trafalgar. Now, he died in that battle. He was shot. He was shot by one of the snipers on board one of the enemy ships. But what he did at that time was something quite incredible. In naval war history, it was uncommon, unknown, in fact, for ships to not fight in the usual side-by-side battle. So one line of ships would line up this way, the other line of ships, their enemy, would line up this way, and they would fire their cannons at each other and see who was left at the end of all the mayhem. What Nelson decided to do was to break with tradition, and this is why the enemy was so confused. Now, he was able to do this and turn and break his fleet up into two lines that, instead of going broadside, ended up attacking at right angles. These people had never seen this done before, and neither had his own captains. But after a meeting he had as their leader and told them, this is what I want to do, but I trust you to maneuver and to act and take decisions depending on the circumstances, they followed him into battle. And they destroyed the combined forces. That led to the British Empire basically being unchallenged on the sea for the next 150, 200 years. That is the power of showing people you have faith in them. Now, it didn't happen overnight. Nelson didn't just simply have a meeting and showed faith in them the night before the battle. This was a process. This was something Nelson had been doing for many, 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 many years. And Nelson understood the importance of this because he was brought up by his uncle in the galleys of a galleon, which his uncle was the captain of. He began at a very young age cleaning the toilets, the latrines downstairs, tarring the wood, manning the guns, serving the food, killing the rats. Nelson knew what it meant to be down there, not up there with the officers. So when he slowly developed through the ranks and became the youngest admiral in the British Navy, he understood fully the first points I've mentioned to you. He understood the activities of having a vision, of showing people how to do things, but he understood above all the importance of building trust by showing people you have faith in them, that you believe in their abilities, by trusting them. Also because he understood what they went through, because he spent time with them individually, doing the jobs they did. As you'll see, this is another activity we'll talk about later. So having faith in people is basically showing them you believe they can succeed. It's quite amazing how, as an effective leader, you can make people believe things they don't believe about themselves. If you tell them often and they believe in you and they trust you and you tell them you will be able to achieve the following, don't be surprised how many of the people you tell that to will actually believe it if you're a strong, inspirational leader. So show them. Now, by showing them, how do you show people that they will succeed, that you believe they'll succeed? Often it's by empowering them, giving them responsibility, taking a risk on them. They know that you're taking a risk. How are you going to see this? How are you going to even be around if you're not actually on the floor with the people with the troops, out there fighting the battles? If they're a team of salespeople, are you in the car with them, going out to visit the shops or the retail outlets, or whoever your customers may be? Do you understand what it takes to be out there? Have you forgotten? Did you even do the job yourself? One of the techniques which you need to create as a routine technique or skill or practice is MBWA. MBWA basically is managing by walking about. You can't lock yourself away in an office and expect things to happen. You've got to be with your people. So managing by walking about means basically being with your people, praising them, showing that you believe in them, spotting occasions to praise and telling them, I saw that, that's really good. Keep this up. You're going to make it in life. You're going to go here. If you keep this up, you're going to end up being promoted if you're able to do that. We'll give you a team leader position the way you're going. This is something you can expect a pay rise. Whatever the reasons are and whatever the outcomes are, show them that you believe in them. Now, you don't have to reward them. You don't have to dangle carrots of reward. Not all the time. In fact, I would prefer you didn't do that as often as most managers or leaders of people do. Sometimes just that word, that encouragement, that pat on the shoulder, that thank you, that show of appreciation is enough. A letter maybe from the CEO or from you, an email telling them thank you, taking the time. Take them out for lunch if you have the budget. Show them that you believe in them. They're going to make mistakes like you and I make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Nothing's ever perfect. And that's the wonderful thing about life. When you make friends with the imperfect part of your life, then you get on with life. But of course, many people who work for you, the more inspirational you are as a leader, the more they want to impress you as a leader, the greater it seems that they fail you. So when they make mistakes, often they feel discouraged. Your job through managing by walking about is to see this happen, to intervene and to encourage them when they make mistakes. Use criticism as a skill, as a technique to help them realign, get back on track. And when they do get back on track, show them that you have faith in them by praising them, That's why you need both wings of your dove. And finally, show them that you trust in them by giving them real responsibilities. When you do that, they know that they've been given responsibility. They know they've done something different. They know they've done something special, and basically they'll work harder for you. Having faith in them isn't easy. Often you'll find people will frustrate you. You'll have the opposite. Rather than having faith in people, you're discouraged yourself by people. Resist it. As I said before, be patient, be resilient, and be extremely, extremely saintly with them. They are sensitive, okay? They're the sort of, often when you're leading people who are led by a strong leader, they're often hypersensitive towards failure or even success. So if you see that they've succeeded in something, then show them that you trust them. Tell them thank you. If you don't praise them for something they know they've done well, they might even get offended. There's a great book also, which you might want to read, called Punished by Rewards by Alfie Kohn. A fantastic book. It's all research based, and he presents the case basically about praising people. And when you praise people, if you don't do it in the right way, you can actually end up either punishing them or punishing others by praising individuals. You have to be very careful how you do that. Of course, that's another course. So that's the third activity of leadership. Our fourth activity is to stay positive no matter what. Not easy. Very easy to say, very easy for me to type, but actually doing it is the challenge. How do you stay calm when your agents, your salespeople, your frontliners, when all the people are supposed to be in the job that you're paying them to do, are doing it badly, doing it wrongly, upsetting your customers, not selling as much? What if they do the wrong thing, or they lose sight of the vision, or they come up with their own vision? The patience that you need is enormous. Now, what you certainly must never do is, if you have these worries or even your own personal worries, because you'll have your own financial worries, your worries about COVID, your worries about your own family members, you have your own personal problems, as I said earlier, okay? Keep them to yourself. The last thing you want to do when you're leading people is make your people feel in any way that not everything is okay, that everything is not all okay. They've got to feel the ship is afloat and we're unbeatable. And that inspiration comes from the leader. Now, there may be holes all over the place, but only you know it, and you're fixing them. You're getting them solved. You don't go sharing these problems with your people. And why not? Well, think about it. How would you feel if the leader of your team, of your organization, ran around complaining about money, about the future, about how COVID's destroying my business and God knows how we're going to survive? How do you think that's going to affect them? And who do you think you're going to lose first when they feel very unsafe because they might lose their job very shortly? You're going to lose your best people. Your best people are always the first ones to jump ship. So you have a talent drain when you start to do this. Your problems and concerns are real, but they're your problems and concerns. So I'm not saying don't share them with anyone. I'm saying don't share them with your team. I've seen, for example, managers of people hope to get some kind of cooperation and understanding from the team when they start to share on their Monday morning meeting all their problems and all the concerns they have, hoping to get some compassion back from their team and understanding. And what do you get back? They'll use it against you. If anything, it makes your life more difficult, more complicated. They don't care. They don't care if you're having marital problems. They don't care if you're having financial problems. They don't care if you're worried about COVID or your uncle who's vulnerable. They don't care. All they care about, unfortunately, at the end of the day, is themselves. And when you start complaining, they don't feel inspired, and you start to take away from your leadership abilities. So portraying a positive, strong, all is okay attitude is vital in front of your team. Naturally, don't keep your problems to yourself. You have to find an outlay, someone to talk to share your issues and problems, to find solutions. Don't use your team though. So don't share your problems. Deal with these without allowing them to affect your team's motivation. Our fifth activity is coming up. Learn from your mistakes. You and I and all of us will make mistakes. The mistakes we'll make, of course, are sometimes big ones, serious ones. Other times they're not so bad. But of course, the people that you lead will make mistakes. Now, sometimes when they make mistakes, we as leaders, especially if it's an urgent or serious or potentially very serious error that we need to intervene and correct, we get in there, roll our sleeves up, and we fix it ourselves. The problem with that is, one, it discourages the people who are supposed to do the job, who made the mistake and are supposed to correct it. So they feel undermined. And two, they learn nothing when you fix it yourself without involving them. So a decision needs to be taken when we make mistakes or other people make mistakes, okay? That where you're going to either intervene or not intervene. You're going to intervene partially and guide them into solving the problem, or you're going to take over completely. Now, that judgment is a judgment you're going to have to take depending on the seriousness and the urgency of the problem. I would prefer that if you're in leadership, that if it's at all possible, instead of actually taking over, demotivating everyone, and then solving and fixing it yourselves and maybe, giving them one or two bad looks for having made the mistake, that you actually work together as a team whenever possible, you and them, or if it's a team error, get the whole team to solve the problem, to work together to find out, one, what went wrong. So with your guidance as a leader, you're going to help them understand how to solve problems again in the future and avoid this problem happening again in the future. So one, you have a debate with the person individually or with a team if it's a team and ask them as the leader, what do you think went wrong? Why did it go wrong? In that debate and discussion, they're expressing reasons why they think it went wrong. You may discover, for example, it wasn't their fault at all. Maybe it was your fault. Maybe it wasn't your fault or their fault. It was nobody's fault. Maybe it's something none of you thought about. Maybe it was just an anomaly, a peculiar circumstance. Whatever the case was, what went wrong? Establish what went wrong and agree. When you've agreed what went wrong, then your job as leaders to help them and guide them through the process of understanding how should it have gone? What should have the right outcome been? So what went wrong? How should it have not gone wrong? What should have been the outcome? So now we can contrast what went wrong with what should have happened. When we've understood these two, we've agreed that this was the case, we go to the next stage, the third stage. And the third stage is we agree a solution. How can we fix it? Now, this process which I'm talking about takes a lot longer than simply saying, oi, fix it, do it this way, and moving on. It's more efficient, the problem gets solved, but nobody learns anything and you may undermine them. So whenever possible, what I'm asking you to do as a leader, if you want to be more effective, is to take the time out to spend time with that individual or that team to go through that three-step process. Identify what went wrong, how it should have been done, and then what the solution should be. When you've agreed the solution, if you're happy with that, move on. What you've done here is created a learning process of thinking where in the future, when problems happen again, they should understand to do the same thing again without you. So now you're developing people so that your leadership is empowering people to think for themselves. So the next time they have a different problem, they get together, they go through the process and they go, what went wrong? Why did it go wrong? How should it have been? Okay, and how can we fix it and avoid it happening again in the future? And now that you've created a learning environment or a learning individual who can do it on their own or a team that can do it in a team. This process takes longer, but it's more productive. And that's what I mean by learn from your mistakes. If you're not doing this constantly and helping people to learn from the mistakes, then you're simply going to be putting out fires all the time and getting frustrated. Even if you think they should know this, if they're not doing it, your job is to make sure that they do it. So learn from your mistakes, be tactful, choose when to take over or when to step aside and let them do it themselves and solve the problem themselves. Know when to step back, therefore, and only step in if it's a crisis. And then after that crisis, you can always go back and do this process all over again. So you can solve the problem in the crisis, and then when you can, go back and say what went wrong, how should it have been, what was the right way it should have happened, what is the solution, how can we avoid it happening again in the future. So that's learning from our mistakes. And this is our last slide before we stop for a 10-minute coffee break. Let's look at the differences between managing people and leading people, because they're not really the same thing, though they're related. Managers are process-based. They are concerned with things such as resources and processes, systems and procedures. Now, I'm not saying that the leader isn't, but the leader knows that when they're leading, they're doing certain different things. So if you're managing people, then you need to do the management part of your job, but also do the leadership part. So let's try and see what the differences are. So managers schedule tasks. They schedule work and give people rosters, for example. They tell people when they should come into work and when they shouldn't, what time they start work if they work on a rostering basis, okay? What work they should do, giving them job responsibilities. So they delegate. They use data to support recommendations. They coordinate efforts. They coordinate resources. So they make sure financial departments are giving us the budget to be able to spend and create and develop. That's all management. Very important, very useful, but not leadership. If you look down that list further, we've got monitoring people's progress, tasks lists, creating follow-up systems and procedures, monitoring budgets, using data and analytics. But look to the right now. This is what leaders do. On top of all the management part of your work, you need to give feedback on performance. If you're not telling people how they're doing, they're not motivated. One of the reasons why people leave an organization, when they were researched by Forbes a couple of years ago, one of the principal reasons why they said they left the organization is because the manager never informs me and never asks me. They never inform me on my progress or what's going on or what decisions have been taken. And two, they never ask me about how I feel, my opinion, my views. So feedback is essential. Leaders give and expect to get feedback. Managers just basically, it's all directional, it's all instruction, all telling. Leaders motivate, they coach, they plan and prioritize, they explain goals, plans and roles, they inspire people. So these are all activities. This is hard work. Leadership skills are often lost or deprioritized for managerial tasks. If you're a manager of people and you're a lawyer, for example, if your team of lawyers are very technical, then you may think that leading that team of people is all in with a technical focus. It's not. Yes, it's important to make sure they're doing things technically correct. But what about the leadership aspect? How are you feeling today? How can I help you? How can I serve you better? Well done for that. You could have done that better. Leadership, take on more responsibility. Leadership is about not just the technical aspect of a person's job. And when you only focus on that, you're not leading people, you're just managing. In other words, you're losing people. You're losing performance. You're losing motivation. You're probably losing customers and you're probably losing income. Because highly motivated people perform better, make less mistakes, find better solutions faster, and they make more money for the organization. But that all comes from leadership, not from managing people. The management part of the business keeps people on track, avoid its compliance, its parameters, its bookmarks, it's how we do things and in what process we do things, all very important. But leadership is the blood. So if everything else in management are the organs, the blood that gives it life is leadership. Another analogy I like to use would be all the managerial skills, even including the technical skills, are, for example, the ammunition of a gun. You can have amazing artillery shells or bullets, right? But if you don't have the means or the mechanism to deliver them, then what's the point? Leadership skills are all about having the delivery system. You need both the ammunition and the delivery system. Sorry about focusing on just war today. I don't know why that's happening to me. Actually, I do know why it's happening to me because I did a bit of research earlier and it had to do with the Gulf War. And so it got stuck in my head. But it's still a good analogy, right? So being able to, it's like having someone who's a brilliant mathematician, okay? Or an exceptional lawyer, right? If they're unable to transmit their ideas to a group of people in a presentation, then there'll be no buy-in into their ideas or creations. or their concepts. So you need to have both, right? Leadership skills include, for example, sharing the vision, providing focus for the office, for the team, so we all know where we're going. And when we're off track, it's motivating people, uniting people, so we all feel like we're special. One of the things that fires up motivation in any team is that feeling of being part of a special team. So sometimes one way you could do this is by giving or splitting your team into two teams and creating some healthy rivalry, and then leading both, or creating sub-leaders for each team who report to you. Yeah. A funny thing happens when you put people into competition mode like that. They compete, even though you have to be careful that they don't compete aggressively. They remain one unit at the same time. So some healthy rivalry is one way of leading people. Ensuring effective induction is vital for leadership. Leadership's about bringing people into the organization seamlessly so they feel welcomed. They're introduced to people properly. They're given the skills and the knowledge to be able to do their job and take on the responsibility they so want to take on, to impress you, to be praised by you. So leadership, as you can see, is not the same as managing people. And the moment that we understand that there are two very important components that we need to be very aware of, is the moment that we begin to lead people effectively. So let's take a quick coffee break now. I think we'll do it now because we've done enough time talking and you're probably getting tired, just about an hour. And I'll be back in 10 minutes to continue with some more practical advice on how to lead people. We should be ready by about, by about 11 o'clock, a little bit earlier than what we thought. So you can get on with the rest of your day on this Monday morning. Here we go. Hello again, guys. So here we go. Welcome back. So we ended up by talking about learning from our mistakes, and then we spoke about the differences between managing people and leading people. In this next last segment of your training, let's go into a bit more detail as to how we do certain things, right? So leaders, we said, need to show them how. Do you remember that one? To show them how, you need to be visible. You're getting into the trenches with your people, so you need to coach. So showing people how requires you to be more hands-on. As I said earlier, coaching isn't telling people what to do. That's direction. Coaching is walking the distance with them. Sometimes, as I said earlier, slightly behind them, pointing out the different options that a person may have or choices that they have to do certain things. So let's say, for example, Joe works for me, and Joe had an issue, a problem, and he chose the wrong behavior, the wrong attitude. And it resulted in Joe making some huge blunder at work, which costs us loads of money. Now, I can either get angry with Joe and sit there and scream and shout and criticize Joe and destroy his motivation and probably affect everybody else on my team. Or I could turn around and say, Joe, let's work this out and find out how we can fix this. And so what I do is I use two techniques. First of all, before I can use these two techniques, I begin with agreeing with Joe that there was a problem. Because unless Joe agrees that there was an issue or a problem, we can't correct it. So the first stage is show Joe what the problem was, then get Joe to agree that there was an issue. One of the ways of doing this would be to show the evidence, right? The evidence can never be controverted. So if they're sales figures, if they're customer complaints, okay, if they're timing and timesheets, whatever the reasons are, whatever they are, the evidence is, if necessary, because you don't always need it, if you feel you need it, bring in the evidence and say, look, Joe, you see, you said you didn't believe me, but look at the numbers. Now, once Joe's agreed that there is an issue, you need to find a solution to the issue, right? To the problem. You can either tell Joe, don't do it again, do it this way. And Joe will probably nod. Okay. You're not showing him anything. You're just telling him what to do. Joe will nod because he doesn't want the stress, doesn't want to be in your bad books, agrees he'll do it, says sorry, and off he goes. Or you can do it the proper way. And the type of technique, the The technique includes 2 skills. The first one is drawing out with what we call drawing out the consequences. When I say draw out the consequences, I use a technique that helps the person, okay, who comes up with an idea on how they can fix the problem, see the consequences of that choice. So there's drawing out the consequences and there's promotion of discovery. Promotion of discovery basically enables the person, encourages the person who you're coaching to find solutions to the problem, to sort of brainstorm them with you. Instead of me telling Joe how to fix it, I'm asking Joe through promotion of discovery, Joe, how would you fix it? What could you have done differently? How can you avoid it happening again in the future? And I throw that proverbial monkey onto Joe's shoulder and I listen to Joe actively. Active listening as a leader is a very, very important skill. Active listening is where you shut up your mouth and you open your ears and actively listen to what Joe is saying. Not thinking about what you want to do and how you're going to deal with Joe whilst Joe's talking. Shut it all down and just listen to Joe. Stop all distractions and ask Joe questions like, Joe, how would you fix the problem yourself? How can you, what opportunities are there which you think you can take advantage of? How would you do it differently in the future? How can you avoid it happening ever again? And as Joe talks, you actively listen. Now, active listening basically is nodding, eye contact, and making listening sounds. I see. Oh, I understand. Oh, I hear you. Interesting. When I do this as a leader, I encourage people to speak more. I also give them the gift of listening and I show them that I actually do care. I'm interested. Remember what I said before the break. 2 of the reasons why, according to Forbes, most people leave an organization is because the manager or leader doesn't inform and doesn't ask. I'm asking here. I'm showing interest in Joe and Joe's problems and Joe's solutions and Joe's opinions. As Joe begins to get, I'll feel safe because I'm assertive, I'm not aggressive, and I'm listening to Joe, and he comes up with different ways he can solve the problem in the future. Let's say I disagree with something that Joe's just said. I don't agree. I can see the dangers. Joe can't see it because Joe's new. I've been in this business longer than Joe, and I can see what could happen if Joe goes off in that direction as a solution. And I don't agree with it, right? But I don't want to take over. I want Joe to own it. So if you're showing people how to do things correctly, this is where you draw out the consequences, the first technique. So promotion of discovery, you discover opportunities, ways and solutions, right? And you work with Joe through active listening and you experiment. Then if Joe says something which you don't think will work or you don't agree with as a solution, you can then draw out the consequences. And how do we do that? We say to Joe, Joe, what would happen with what you just said if we did that and we had that situation? Now Joe has to think about it and goes, well, I can't really see anything. Wait a minute. Oh my goodness, I didn't think of this, because if we do that and that comes along, we'll have a problem there. And I'm going, that's correct, Joe. What do you think is an alternative then? So now Joe has to think of an alternative solution. And I haven't told Joe, no, that's not a good idea. I haven't destroyed Joe's motivation, affected his faith in me. I've maintained his respect and I've empowered Joe to think for himself. Now I'm showing him the way. So in a sense, guys, when you want people to do things as a leader and to keep on doing them and to own them, you can't take shortcuts. Telling people isn't good enough. Now, in very rare circumstances, the urgent crisis, then direct, take decisions and do things, and then maybe do this afterwards. But you never, ever just simply tell people what to do, especially when it's something they need to own, if they need to learn a new skill, if they need to change a behavior, come up with better solutions to problems. Let's say it's just simply timekeeping, okay? I need to show Joe how to come in on time. I could either tell Joe, come in on time or you're fired, or I could say, Joe, why are you late? What is the reason for the problem? How can you avoid it happening again in the future? And then hopefully I don't need to draw out any consequences because what Joe said I agree with, and bang, there's now an 80% increased chance that Joe will actually come in on time because I went round the mountain, not through it. What do I mean by this analogy? I love to ski. I ski whenever I can, and I'm blessed to have someone related to me who owns a beautiful property up in the Alps. And when I go skiing with this person, we can go to the other side, to a different country. I don't want to give away too many specifics, but we can go to a different country through the tunnel that takes us right through a mountain, or you can ski over the mountain or go round the mountain, right? Which is the most efficient thing for us to do, to drive right through the tunnel and you're there. What I'm saying is don't do that. What I'm saying in leadership is go over the mountain. It's hard work. It's the longer, less efficient route. It's dealing with people like this patiently, individually, using skills and techniques. And eventually what you get is a more fulfilling, long-lasting experience where the person owns the job, owns the solutions, owns the problem and fixes it on their own, instead of then coming back and repeating the problem and frustrating you. So in leadership, we need to coach that way. And in training, we said we need to show people how to do the job by showing them how to do it and then letting them try it on their own. And then when they've tried it on their own, you congratulate them, praise them and encourage them and set them away. Maybe checking on them a week later, a few days later, to see how they're doing, to show you're still interested. Practice when they're learning a new job and trying to do different things in leadership. When you're helping people practice, they must always practice in private. Who of you in their right mind would go to the dentist, sit in that chair, open your mouth, if the dentist said to you, let me introduce you to my colleague. He or she is brand new. It's their first day as a dentist and they're still in practice. They're still learning. Do you mind if they carry out this root treatment on you today instead of me and I'll just observe? None of you would do that. Why? Because you want the trained, competent dentist doing that root treatment, performing that operation on your teeth. You don't want some beginner who might make a mistake, which will cost you lots of pain or even a tooth. And so with practice and teaching people how to do things, it's always done privately. I've seen some leaders try to tell everyone and show everyone in the office and even their customers how important they are by criticizing employees publicly and then showing them how to do things. In other words, belittling them, embarrassing them in front of people, shaming them in front of their colleagues and customers, showing them how to do it and then apologizing to the customers. Sorry, she's brand new. I mean, what is that? That's the sure way to lose someone and probably demotivate the rest of the team, because that's terrifying for your people. That's aggressive. And so leaders showing the way requires lots of patience, guys. It's not easy. There are no shortcuts. Being visible, we said earlier, was to be available. Managing by walking about, MBWA. You've got to be approachable. So if people need to speak to you, doing this all the time, go, can we do it later? Oh, I haven't got the time. Hurry up, please. You've got to be approachable. Your body language as a leader has to be approachable. So if people need to talk to you, make sure, first of all, if you're making yourself available, make sure you are available, whether you like them or not. Sometimes we don't like certain people on our team. They rub us up the wrong way, but you've got to lead them anyway. So you need more patience and time with those people. They're harder work. So making yourself approachable basically means looking approachable, maybe having a slight smile on your face, keep maintaining and keeping eye contact. A head cant left or right shows the person the left side or the right side of your neck. What does it show? I'm approachable. I don't feel threatened by you. I'm willing to listen also. Making yourself approachable basically goes a long way to people feeling safe with you. And when they feel safe with you, they feel safe with their leader. It means they'll take more risks and they'll work hard to receive more praise because they want to be praised by people that they like. Make sure you're available. You know, having appointments with people is not going to cut it if you're leading a fast-moving sales team, for example. You've got to be available. Now, of course, you need to have your own protected time to do the managerial aspect of your work, always. But you've got to set time apart to be on the floor, in the cars, on the shop floor, around the office or department, so that people see you as the leader. And you've got to be in the thick of things with people. So if there's a crisis, where are you? Locked away in your office? On vacation again? Remote working? Or are you there in the office with your sleeves rolled up, helping people out? So you've got to be visible. Too many managers are secret managers. If you were agents, you'd be secret agents. Leaders, therefore, sometimes do the dirty jobs. The dirty jobs could be stuff that you as a leader used to do before you got promoted. Stuff you don't do anymore because now I'm a leader, right? So there's a lot of territory, pride you've got to get over. Humble yourself, because you've got to do those jobs also to help people out, especially in times of crisis. And when they see a leader doing this, what people are thinking is, I like this leader. I'll work harder for this leader. I'll listen to my leader when they ask me to do things. I'll cooperate. I'll collaborate in times of change, of crisis, because I respect my leader. Because my leader, nothing's beneath them. My leader cares about me and my job still. My leader knows how to do my job. My leader is like me, though I know they're still my leader. Leaders actively help personnel by doing what is often expected only from those people. So as I said, if it's stuff you used to do, then it doesn't mean you don't do it anymore. If anything, you'll gain lots of respect when you do. The problems arise here when you're doing the dirty jobs is, let's say you've been so long in leadership and so many new skills have come along that you don't know how to do the dirty jobs anymore. Here you're going to have an issue and a challenge, because all of a sudden you're creating by default. It may not be intentionally creating it, but what's happening is a gulf is now appearing between your team and you, because you don't understand their jobs anymore. You don't know what it takes. You don't know how hard it is or how easy it is or how complicated it is. And that's why you need to be immersed in the trenches with them, understanding the challenges, maybe even learning their job again or new jobs again, just to immerse yourself in there so you can do those dirty jobs also. This one, I think, out of all different things, out of all the different activities leaders are supposed to do, I think this one, leaders sometimes doing the dirty jobs, is the one leaders least like to do. Because there's a funny misunderstanding that goes along with being promoted into leadership. We all of a sudden think we are now to be respected and everything else is beneath us. We get a better pay, and now people have to do what I say. So getting a better pay doesn't mean people do what you say. Getting a better pay and being a leader means you're given greater responsibility to develop and bring up people, to motivate, to encourage, not to tell people what to do. And if you're not in the trenches with them, why would they do what you ask them to do? So leaders need to sometimes do their jobs. You don't need to do it all the time, but occasionally. The respect you'll gain is enormous. As we said before, leaders coach. They take time to coach. They create systems and they monitor these. When coaching, you always agree mutual goals and you track these. You always go back in the future and see how they're doing on the goals. So you need to hold people accountable to mutually agreed targets and goals. We mentioned earlier that you need to show you have faith in people, display a deep belief in people by giving them responsibility, by delegating. And we're going to see in a minute how to do this. This is why I'm going back onto this, because I want to delve deeper into how do we delegate true responsibility instead of enlarging a person's job. How do we enrich their job, which is motivating? Okay, so great leaders show they have faith in people. They actively look for opportunities to praise people, and they don't enrich. They enrich. They don't enlarge people's jobs. So this is the matrix I was talking about. When we talk about enriching people's jobs and making them feel more motivated, you usually do this by empowering people. So when we look at motivation in the workplace, motivation in the workplace is very particular. Okay, we follow very similar rules to usual motivation in people generally, from Maslow's hierarchy and all the different models of motivation. But one thing we know for sure, that one of the most powerful ways that you can motivate someone in the workplace is to empower them. So what is empowerment? Empowerment basically is giving people true, absolute responsibility for portions of their job. So I'm not saying absolute, complete in everything, but for portions within parameters. So let's take a receptionist at a hotel. Let's say at a busy hotel, the receptionist, every time that there's a need for a room change, needs to consult the reservations or the front office manager, but they can never make a decision on their own. Okay, and let's say it's now 3 o'clock in the morning, there's been a late flight, somebody comes to the hotel, they go up to their room, come down complaining they want to change rooms. Now, if that receptionist isn't empowered to be able to change that room right away, you could create a monster out of this molehill. Okay, literally, this client who wants to move out of the room can't move because the receptionist hasn't got the power or the authority to do it. They need to wait till the morning, till 8 o'clock, till the reservations department comes in, or whoever comes in that they need authority from. It's not going to work. It's just not going to cut it. Receptionists, for example, who are given the power to be able to move are going to have far more satisfied customers because they can act and react much more efficiently, much more quickly. Customers are going to be happier. If they can, they will, if they're empowered. The issue I see with leadership is leaders see empowering people as a devolution of their power. So if I have certain authority as a leader, to give you authority to take decisions without me doesn't look good on me. Therefore, if I lose that authority, I might not I'm thinking I might not be as valuable to the organization as the organization think, because you can do it without me. So why would I want that to happen? So some leaders do that. They become highly territorial, they hold and they become bottlenecks for all decisions, and any decisions that need to be taken need to be passed through me, your leader. Not a good idea, as I said. You've got to take the plunge. Start to give real responsibility to people in your team to take decisions despite you. Now, the problem with this is sometimes leaders will give away the responsibilities they least like about their job. So let's say you're not an analytical person and you hate numbers and you hate having to add up things at the end of the week and make that report. So because I don't like it, instead of actually doing it, I delegate it. Or shall we say, I dump it on somebody on my team. They'll take it because I'm the boss, I'm the leader, they'll do it, but they won't like it. Now, that is enlarging a person's job. It's demotivating. Enriching a person's job is something completely different. It's a different species. To enrich somebody's job, basically, I give them gradual responsibility if they want it. Some people, unfortunately, just simply don't want more responsibility. You're going to meet these people when you're leading people. That's okay. What you want are people who'll take on incrementally more and more responsibility. And as they do so and they feel more and more empowered, their motivation levels increase, the efficiency of the organization increases, productivity goes up, complaints go down. People are happier. So how do we do this? If you look at the screen over here, most tasks begin of empowerment with simply don't do it. So a new person joins your organization and they know all the things they're not allowed to do. And 1 or 2 they're allowed to do, but everything else, don't do it. Just do this and nothing else. Highly demotivating, but very important. Why? Because if they start to do things they don't understand or don't have a competence in, many mistakes can be made. So it's obviously going to begin with very limited responsibilities. And slowly, though, the job you've got as a leader is to expand. So if you look at don't do it, what we're trying to do is get people to the next box where you tell them after a week or a month or so, you may turn around and say, listen, from now on, Petra, you can now ask me and do it. So Petra's like, what? I could ask and do it instead of don't do it? Yeah, I think, you know what? Just ask me and go ahead and do it. That's fantastic. Now, Petra's motivation's increased, her knowledge base has increased, her competence is increasing, so you've got a more qualified member of staff. After some time, you can expand, and now you can tell Petra, from now on, just do it, and just tell me you've done it. Are you joking? I can just go ahead and do it? I mean, Petra's going to go back and tell her mum and her dad and her boyfriend now, you won't believe it. I'm doing this all on my own now. Motivation is sky high. She's taking on more responsibility. She's becoming also an unpaid ambassador of leadership, telling everyone how great leadership are and how we should trust leadership and cooperate with leadership. The ultimate goal, whenever possible, and it's not always possible, is to get everybody to the do it box, the highest level of empowerment, where they simply do it without even having to ask or inform us. When people are at the highest level of empowerment, they're at the highest level of motivation, and you'll find you have the most fun, efficient workplace that you can create. The truth, however, is that most leaders don't want that. They're afraid. You're afraid that if you give too much responsibility and empowerment to people, what will happen, as you can see over here, is that people will make many mistakes. And at the end of the day, who's going to get the blame? You will, and rightfully so. So because that is a fact and it will happen, this is why we have an incremental approach to it. We don't simply give it the do it responsibility straight away. We do it slowly. We begin with don't do it. And over time, through monitoring, through encouraging, through training, through coaching and their own experience, we then tell them to go ahead, just ask me and do it. And over time, as they gain more confidence and we know they make less mistakes, we then tell them to go ahead and do it, just inform us. And when we're really sure, then we can give them the highest level, which is just go ahead and do it. I trust you with my eyes closed. The more you can do this, the more you'll create a machine in your workforce that literally will work despite leadership. The problem here is that most leaders think that that's not a good idea. Most leaders think that if I can create a team of people who don't need me, then I lose my job. There's nothing further from the truth. If you're a genius, it can create and develop and empower people to the point where the team practically runs without leadership, then you're the sort of person that the organization will identify as a key player to invest further in. You'll get more responsibility and you'll move along very quickly in an organization. So the empowerment matrix is essential. You need to be able to do this slowly and incrementally. There's no hurry. But don't leave people stuck in the don't do it or ask and do it box. Nothing is more demotivating, nothing is more inefficient, causes all sorts of bottlenecks for decisions to be making, ultimately affecting sales and your customers. So from the don't do it, ask and do it and tell, and the do it box, let's go to the support and direction matrix. When you vary your support and direction, when you're enabling and encouraging people, when you're leading them, you're using basically a number of different tools. If you're supporting people, okay, you're spending more time with them, encouraging them, training them, and coaching them. So if you look at this matrix over here, the higher up you are in the matrix, the more support you're giving people. So the question to ask yourself is, who in my team needs more support than others? Who needs less? And those individuals you need to spend more time with, encouraging, coaching, enabling, okay, one-on-one training. Some of the people lower down on the matrix just simply need direction. They're motivated, they're experienced, and all they need from you is to just tell them what they need to do and just give them responsibility and point them in the right direction. Now, because you have a mix of these different people in your team, you need to be able to vary direction and support according to the individuals, which brings me to this important point once again. You're not leading teams, you're leading individuals who make a team. So the moment you're not seeing people as individuals or choosing to give more support or direction to a certain person and not to others, means you're failing them and your team, which means you're losing out. So encouragement is more spending time with people, going for a coffee, simply being by their desk. Coaching is more, as you've seen, an activity, helping them, giving them tasks, helping them discover and drawing out the consequences. Delegation is asking people, what would you like to do, and then giving them more responsibility. And direction is simply pointing them in the right direction. So think about your team and the people who work for you at the moment. What level of support or direction do you give people? Are you giving them the right levels of support and direction, or are you just giving everybody direction at team meetings and expecting everyone to pull their weight? Or are you just giving too much support and you're left with no time to do all the managerial aspect of your job? You've got to find a healthy balance between these two to have a healthy team led by a strong leader. An inspirational, powerful leader does all of these different things. If you don't do these things, you can expect to begin to fail. And above all, to conclude, leaders lead by example. So if you're expecting people to dress a certain way, come in on time, look after themselves in a certain way, do things in a certain way, of a certain level of professionalism, but you're not doing it yourself, then you're failing them as a leader. In other words, you hold yourself to the same standards. If anything, higher standards. You set the standard. The word the standard from medieval war, again talking about battles, comes from holding up the standard in a battle. Chaotic battle of swords and shields and horses and screams and noise and dust. The standard was a flag you could see, maybe a trumpet playing in the distance or a bugle, and you could see that standard, and that standard was the flag. That standard said, this is where the army is. Is the king going forward? Is he retreating? Is he standing there? If the standard fell, you would run to pick up the standard again, because when the standard was up, everybody gathered around the standard. Everybody felt safe because the king was still moving forward. So you as a leader need to be the standard bearer. You hold the standard and tell everyone this is the standard, and you can't cut corners. You embody basically everything about leadership and everything you ask them to do, including, of course, what we started off with, the vision. You need to be inspirational. And inspirational leaders basically don't transform people simply by making them do things. People choose to be transformed because they're inspired by their leader. You don't just talk the talk, you walk the walk. You do it yourself. You don't cut corners. You dress the part, you're self-controlled, you're very self-controlled, you avoid aggression, you're always assertive and calm, you're reassuring and you're always determined, and you're organized. Leadership, therefore, is a great responsibility. And I think about people from the past who are great leaders. I think about great leaders who inspired people. They still have an effect on people today, from great spiritual leaders like Jesus, for example. And Jesus was an inspirational leader because he was servant more than anything else. The inversion concept of Christianity, for example, was that instead of being respected and praised and given the highest place at the table, leadership was turned on its head and all became about taking the lowest place, serving other people, being there for people, listening, being patient, being kind, encouraging. These skills are vital in today's leadership. You're dealing also with millennials. Millennials today haven't got the patience older persons had. In other words, they want to succeed yesterday. We live in an instant gratified world where they want it yesterday. They don't understand that it takes time. Maybe they're coming up from families that are where both parents are working and they feel they become high achievers who are highly independent, who don't feel that anybody should interfere in their lives. And these are the challenges you're now faced with as a leader. How do you get these people also to be inspired by you? Leadership is an ongoing activity and it evolves. If you want to be a great leader, you will. If you don't, you simply won't. The end result will always be attrition rates. Look at the people who are staying with your organization or with your team. The more people you're losing, so the higher the attrition rates, the more worrying it should be about the signs about you and your leadership skills. For research shows that most people don't leave the organization. When they leave an organization, what they're generally leading is their manager or their direct report. In other words, their leader who's not leading them. They would rather stay with the organization, but they just won't work with that person anymore. They're not inspired. So don't be that leader or manager. Treat your people with respect. Use these skills and activities. Share this video if you think it's been useful for you or a colleague who maybe is also leading people. So if there are any questions, this would be the time to post them in the comment section below. And whilst you're thinking about doing that, usually there aren't any questions, I'd like to talk to you about my upcoming show. Hang on a second. Basically, I've got this new show starting up soon, and it's going to involve, it's two shows actually. The first one's going to be all about, let me just lower this, all about topics of the day. It's going to be called On the Record. I want to thank Bigger Picture and Matthew Pulicino and his team for helping me out creating the podcast On the Record. You'll be hearing about that soon. It'll be issues varying from food to football, okay, and everything in between. The only thing I will not touch and will never touch is politics. So no politics on the Record, but everything else. And then on Monday, starting in 2 weeks' time, we've got Café au Live. Café au Live basically is a live stream on Facebook at 8 o'clock in the mornings every Monday, which is centered entirely around one sector of industry, which is real estate. So if you're in real estate, then this would be the one for you. Sharing group ideas, learning and discussions, just for real estate agents, 45 minutes in the morning to start your week with a boost. And you can join anytime live. You'll be seeing the promotional material for this as time comes along. And that's On the Record and Café au Live. And I'm seeing thanks from Mark D'Amicoli. Thanks for your thanks, Mark. Really much appreciate that. Again, this is being streamed live and it's available on my Facebook page. So you can share this video, you can share this live stream with anybody else who you think might find it beneficial. So time is pressing now and we've all got different things to do. I'm not seeing any more comments, guys, and that's me signing out. Stay in touch with me. Send me a friend request so you can stay in touch with any future releases. And that's me signing out. Thanks a lot. Be good. Be great. Be a superb leader.